So I wanted to make a video about the UFO phenomenon, but it has been a really hard task for me because the data doesn't point into a coherent direction. So there's no one single theory which can encompass all the information that we have. And we're now in a context in which we've never been before because uh, David Grusch happened last summer in July. There was this U.S. Congress hearing with David Grusch, Commander David Fravor, and Ryan Graves. And David Grusch is basically a whistleblower who came out publicly with secret information confirming that the US government has, through private contractors, alien craft, UFOs, alien craft, which is trying to reverse engineer, or maybe it has already done so, and it has also biologics, which means alien bodies, and who knows what more. The problem is that he can't give all the details, he can't name the names, but he is confirming this and he has been researching this, and he claims that he has 40 witnesses who are willing to come and testify in front of Congress, and they will do so maybe in the coming years, maybe also this year. We don't know yet. But the thing with the UFOs started way before this, and I'm not talking necessarily about the 80s with Bob Lazar. I'm talking about recent events in 2017 with Lou Elizondo and ATIP, the New York Times article where a video of the 2004 Nimitz incident was presented to the public. And in that video, we have footage of the Tic Tac UFO captured by Commander David Fravor, who testified also alongside David Grusch in July of last summer. So from that, we had also an attempt at writing legislation to disclose information about the phenomenon. We're talking about the Schumer-Rounds amendment, and it didn't pass, or at least it passed in a very limited form. And you think who would who would try to stop this legislation from passing? Because the reaction people had when this thing came out wasn't really that positive, and I will talk about it later because it's kind of frustrating. Like people were talking about psyops, they weren't taking this information seriously, and it's frustrating for someone who is trying to figure out what the truth is and to come up with theories and try to also discuss what is happening with other people. It's frustrating to see that people generally either don't care or they're extremely in denial about this. So I'd say that there are different theories which try to explain the phenomenon. The first one is like the typical alien theory that they come from another planet and they're entirely physical. But there is another one which was and still is supported and advocated by Jacques Vallée, who is one of the best ufologists out there. He worked on Project Blue Book, which was, of course, a project that tried to give false information or come up with false conclusions and false analysis of the phenomenon to basically say that there's nothing to see here. So Jacques Vallée had the theory, and has the theory because he's still alive, that we are dealing with interdimensional beings, and he tried to draw a connection between aliens and folkloric beings and folkloric tales. He thought that he had found parallel between the two. Other theories are that they might be us from the future, and there's another one which is also quite interesting, which claims that they're not from other planets, they're from underneath the surface. And there are some legends like Agartha. There's also a novel called The Coming Race, which talks about the Vril Society, and it's basically an underground society which is quite advanced and which appears on the surface from time to time, and the UFO phenomenon could be explained by such a device. And there have been recent attempts, like Bernardo Kastrup has taken this into consideration, and it's interesting. He wrote an article about the different possible explanations. And some other person who dealt with and is dealing with this topic is the Iranian philosopher Jason Reza Jorjani. I do appreciate when people take this seriously, like he is doing, because not everyone is open to this. There's a lot of stigma on the topic, and I think it's really unfortunate because this topic can be really useful to facilitate a paradigm shift. Depending on which direction you want to go, depending on which theory you will favor to explain the phenomenon. And I see great potential for it being directed towards something spiritual. And Jason Reza Jorjani has picked up this topic because he's very well connected to the people in the know. He appeared recently, or relatively recently, on Danny Jones, who has an interesting podcast. It was a 4-hour podcast with Jorjani, and Danny Jones usually has interesting and a bit wacky guests, but it's good because you need to be exposed to different perspectives and different kinds of information, and you need to filter that information like manually, because if you take your information just from the mainstream, there are a lot of things which are left out. So I applaud people like Danny Jones that give space to some people with weird theories and allow us to have access to like different hypotheses and a lot of strange information. But my first encounter with Jorjani hasn't been on Danny Jones. It has been on Uberboyo, who is another really interesting YouTuber whom I really recommend. He creates really good content. But my first encounter with Jorjani has been really bad. Like, he was talking about the same topic, UFO, the UFO topic, and at a certain point, he mentioned China and Russia and claimed that they were promoting a perennialist framework so that they would facilitate the invasion of the aliens and we would welcome them as gods through this perennialist framework. But I don't see how that is something that is actually happening. So he claimed that China is more Confucianist than communist, which is kind of debatable. But even if it's Confucianist, Confucianism isn't a religion that is really that celebrated in perennialism, because it's not like Taoism. It's more focused on the legal and moral structure of society than on the theology. And it's not a prime candidate for like a perennialist to integrate Confucianism in his or her system. And on the other hand, Russia is Orthodox. And as far as I know, Orthodox Christianity is really closed-minded when it comes to perennialism. You might say, well, Russia has been an empire and potentially could be an empire again. So empires have to be more open to other cultures and religions. They have to be more cosmopolitan because they have to absorb and integrate different cultures. So perennialism would be a great framework for this to work. But if you look at how the church, the Orthodox Church, and I'm more familiar with the church in Romania because that's where I'm from, and I'm baptized as an Orthodox. I have read the doctrine and the main theologians here. And if you look at it, they reject perennialism. Yeah, Russia has Dugin. Dugin is a bit of a perennialist. He's like very open towards paganism and other religions and so on. But Dugin isn't a representative of the Orthodox Church. And it just doesn't fit. I mean, no, Russia is not perennialist. China is not perennialist. They're not preparing any sort of perennialist framework for the alien invasion. So when I heard that, I just turned off the video and basically I had a really bad opinion about Mr. Jorjani. But when this video appeared, I tried to listen again to him with an open mind. And I have to say, he offers very good information and he's very well connected. He is actually pretty smart, I have to say. And it's worth watching. I will recommend this video, but I'm making a response video primarily about the bad things in it because there are still bad things. And it's like he has all this good information, but he's not able to come up with a good theory to explain that information, to connect the dots properly. I don't see him having any solid thinking process when he comes with the conclusions, when he draws the conclusions. So the good that I see in him is that he's smart and also very courageous. Like he's also very politically active. He's been a member of the alt-right, but to his saying, he wanted to deviate from the direction in which the movement was going, and he basically infiltrated in the movement to go into a more progressive direction. He is 100% a classical liberal, and it shows. It shows, but also another positive about him is that he is well connected and has some interesting stories. Like he talks about a fellow who claimed to be a member of the Vril Society, and he was also a Secret Service agent, probably from MI6. And it's very interesting to see how all politics are kind of controlled by the secret services, how they infiltrate into political movements, and how they direct things behind the scenes. And he was talking also about the Intercept, which is this a newspaper which was founded by Glenn Greenwald, the guy who brought us Edward Snowden. And he said that even in that newspaper, there are agents, probably CIA, who infiltrated, and all the information is kind of controlled. And well, I don't know how accurate that is, because he said this after a personal issue he had with the Intercept, and even Glenn Greenwald wasn't happy about it because they wrote some bad stuff about him. But it's a really interesting idea to entertain this Secret Service thing, which goes on behind the scenes in journalism and politics. And he's a philosopher, so he has a really good definition of what a philosopher is. Like a person who deals with assumptions, a person who tries to figure out what the assumptions behind certain claims and beliefs are, and who tries to dismantle those assumptions to get to the truth. Unfortunately, he kind of fails to embody that archetype. He has a good understanding of what the archetype is, and he does a good critique of academia, because philosophers and professors in academia do not embody this archetype at all. He is, I think, braver than them, and that's a thing which I really appreciate. He is closer to that archetype than people in academia, but still, he still has some core assumptions which he isn't willing to give up. And I'm not going to blame him necessarily for this, because it's a normal thing. You cannot really go that far. The thing is that what his core assumptions are is basically the values of classic liberalism. He's a classic liberal. And a thing which I really appreciate about him is that he is extremely explicit about this, and he makes the connection between liberalism, modernity in general, and the figure of Prometheus. He basically states that he is a Luciferian, because Prometheus is Lucifer, the light bringer. Prometheus is the same entity as Lucifer. So he says that he's Luciferian, Promethean. Liberals in general do not admit this because, of course, there's a negative connotation more when we are talking about Lucifer than Prometheus, because Prometheus, okay, it's a bit more neutral. It's not directly into the Christian framework. So when we're talking about Prometheus, we're talking about the emancipation of humanity from the gods, and we're talking about science, knowledge, which was gifted to us by a titan against the will of the gods. So it's this rebellious nature that he celebrates. It's this freedom from tyranny, which is embodied in the figure of Prometheus. And he sees that modernity, it's basically this. It's the emancipation of man from the rule of the church. It's the emancipation of society. And there's a direct connection with Luciferianism, with Prometheanism, and maybe Satanism also. Though we can also make a differentiation between Luciferianism and Satanism, but they can also mean the same thing. And he incorporates these ideas also in his theological thinking. He's an atheist, and he is an advocate for free will, and he doesn't like determinism. And I like the fact that he uses very unconventional means to prove his point when he talks against determinism. He talks about Lynn Buchanan, who is this remote viewer who worked, I think, for the DIA, and he predicted a terrorist attack which would change the world, and they were able to stop that terrorist attack before it happened. So remote viewing is actually a thing. It can predict the future. It can be helpful in many ways. It's not 100% accurate. People who use it don't know exactly how it works. It's more of a kind of developed intuition. Some remote viewers can see things, others can feel things, others can hear things, and so on. And they have pieces of information that come to them when they think about a specific target, and they have to be very impersonal about that information. They don't have to let their subjectivity enter into the equation when they're performing a task, a remote viewing task. So uh, the let's say the best remote viewers have an 80% accuracy rate, something like that, which is quite high, but it's still not 100%. And Jorjani uses this to say that, well, look, we saw the future, we changed it, so determinism is not real, free will is proved. Like, but I think his thinking is quite simplistic, because let's say that I'm doing a drawing. I'm drawing something, and at the end of my drawing, I can see the result. At every step, I took some choices. I made some choices. And the fact that now I can see the drawing complete doesn't mean that I don't have free will. So when I'm like, let's say that I can transcend the third dimension and see everything from the fourth dimension. And I'm seeing myself now in point A. And in 2 days, I'll be in point B. Let's say I'm in Paris. And from the fourth dimension, I can see a line from point A to point B. But point B will be in the future. It's not here now. It's something that will happen. And from the fourth dimension, I can see myself at point B in Paris. So the fact that I can see the future, does it mean that I do not have free will? For me, it doesn't mean this, because whenever I'm in the third dimension and I'm operating from this point of view, I'm always making some choices. I'm always going towards something. The fact that the future me can be seen from, let's say, the fourth dimension doesn't mean that I didn't took those decisions with my own agency while I was living my life in the present. So I don't see a conflict between determinism and free will. I see different perspectives, and I think that Mr. Jorjani has a bit of a bias when it comes to God and free will and so on. And obviously, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not an atheist. I talked a lot about what I understand by God in this channel. But returning to the alien topic, because he's well connected with people who have information on the UFO phenomenon. And there's a problem, because yes, he has good information, but his thinking isn't that solid. Like, he tries to claim that George Bush Sr. has been in contact with the aliens and he made some deal with them. And when asked, well, how do you know? He basically replied, well, he's the prime candidate because he was the director of the CIA. Is that enough evidence? I was expecting more, and he was pressed on this point, and he didn't have anything to offer more than this. But it's funny because there actually is a clip on the internet of a director called David Hoffman, who talks about an incident with George Bush Sr. And I'm going to play the clip. It's basically a story of the sound man who is sitting next to George Bush Sr. And they're not filming, but George Bush Sr. Was drunk, and he basically said that he saw some green men, or he saw the green people, and that he knows they are real. I'm going to play the clip, and you'll see it as well.
And now I'm a professional. I'm in my early 30s. I'm doing political films. It's part of my job. And one of the films I'm doing is interviewing George Bush when he is running for vice president with Ronald Reagan on an airplane. I'm not the interviewer. I'm the director. I set up the scene. They're on the airplane. George Bush is shrinking like crazy. And the sound man is in the back with me. And there's a wireless mic on George Bush. And George Bush is talking to the interviewer. And the cameraman is getting ready. He hasn't started shooting yet. And all of a sudden, my sound man sitting next to me in the seat goes, "Whoa!" And he turns off the sound. Stops recording, stops listening. David, what I just heard freaked me out. What'd you hear? His name was Nigel. What'd you hear, Nigel? Nigel said, I heard George Bush say, hey, you know those little green people? They're real. I saw one dead. Could George Bush have seen a dead alien? You know, I think so. That's what he said to the sound man. Not on tape, unfortunately. Sound man is just listening. But the sound man and I never forgot it.
So some people reacted to this saying that, well, he's just trolling. He's just a big troll. Yeah, of course he's just saying this. He's just a big joker. Nah, he's a trickster. But no. So Jorjani could have used this to corroborate his claim, but unfortunately he didn't. And this is the problem that I have with him. Like, he has good information, he makes bad connections, he doesn't connect the dots properly, and he doesn't provide a solid ground for his claims. What he's doing is like, he has hypotheses which have to be tested. He's bringing out hypotheses, basically. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the wrong part is when he is like certain about this, and he doesn't know why he's so certain, or at least he can't prove why the claim is so, or should be so. So it's a bit frustrating to see this going on. Also, he talked about Graham Hancock and Michael Kreml. And Michael Kreml wrote this book called Prohibited Archaeology, where he presented anomalies in the archaeological record of artifacts and human remains that date way before the accepted timeline for human presence on Earth. So Michael Kreml is a Hinduist, and his solution for this is basically accept the Yuga cycle. Accept the fact that there have been past civilizations that are now gone. There have been different cycles, and humans have always existed on Earth. And Jorjani, on the other hand, isn't a Hinduist, and his claim is that when we are dealing with like metallic objects, metallic spheres from millions of years ago, um, we are dealing with people from the future that have come back in time and have dropped some things there. This is his claim. And again, okay, it's an interesting hypothesis, but on what ground are you building this theory? What's your evidence for this? Because he doesn't say anything about it. He says only that, well, unlike Graham Hancock and Michael Cremo, who are anthropologists, I look at different disciplines. I'm very interdisciplinary, and I can make all sorts of connections and so on. Yeah, but provide some of the proof, provide some of the evidence to support those claims, because you cannot just dismiss Michael Cremo's theory of the Yuga cycle just by saying that. You have to provide more information and a more solid ground. So Jorjani, he is worth a listen. He is an interesting person, but when you listen to him, you have to be very careful and not accept what he says without some analysis and some questioning of his conclusions, because his conclusions are quite questionable. Anyway, I appreciate the fact that he deals with this topic, and one of the problems that I had when I got really into it is that, well, people around me, even the ones who had unconventional interests, like spiritual people, they were and still are extremely closed-minded about this topic. And I was baffled by it. I mean, I still don't know anyone who's actually interested in this. Because there have been some, I would say, attempts to deviate and divert the attention from the topic. Like the first time I encountered this topic in this form, like after David Grusch, I didn't see the hearing when it happened. Like I watched it 2 months after it happened. But before that, I was getting memes saying that, oh, now the government is saying that the UFOs are real, so I don't believe it anymore, or something like that. Or there was this meme with Jeffrey Epstein, and it was saying that, oh, now the government is trying to distract us from Jeffrey Epstein's client list, which is the thing that really matters. So I find it really stupid. Like a lot of people fell for this meme. Like I was getting serious arguments in this form from people whom I considered intellectually bright, and I was baffled. How? I mean, just like have an open mind, try to look at the new data, try to like be open a bit to entertain the possibility that we're not dealing with a psyop here, because it doesn't fit the pattern that much. And I don't know, just don't be so close-minded, because this is the general reaction that I saw in the people around me. And they were coming up with arguments like, well, if the aliens are here, why do they crash? Like, or some other dismissive argument with which, if you think about it more than like 1 minute, you will notice that it's extremely silly and it doesn't disprove anything. And some people just are like, well, if they have the craft, they should show us. Like, otherwise, I don't believe it. So they have this mentality, which is really wrong. They have this lack of curiosity about one of the most important things in our existence. Because consider the implication of this being real. Consider the consequences. Consider the questions that may arise from this. So yeah, the US government has been in possession of the aircrafts. Aliens exist, and now you should ask, what's our position in the power hierarchy? Where are we? What's the relation that the government has with the aliens, if they're real? What's our position as a species in the hierarchy? What are we to them? And so on. So these are really uncomfortable questions. And people should ask these questions, but no, they remained at the stage where they're just, oh no, this is a psyop. Oh no, if aliens are here, then why am I not seeing the craft? Like, that's the wrong way to look at the problem. You have a problem, you have a mystery, you look for proof, you look for a lead, you need to have a detective mentality, not like a lazy person who is just offered all the information on a plate. It doesn't work like that. You need to look for the information yourself. You need to do the research and then come to a conclusion. But yeah, I will talk about this in future videos. I will make one with a theory that I'm trying to figure out. I've been trying to figure out like for more than 1 year, and I hope you enjoyed this one.